That chart. That chart's a couple of months old, and if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened. That chart. That chart's a couple of months old, and if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
Have it confirmed from a source that there was no or very limited drone surveillance that day. There was no effective aerial surveillance plan, basically whatsoever. Aerial surveillance would have detected this threat on the roof. I've told you over and over again, I'm going to get to this in a second, with a Secret Service memo that was sent to me that's going to prove to you that there couldn't have been an air security personnel there, because they changed the plan after we highlighted it. There was no drone.
Flight into the dangerous world of a man who does not exist. A young loner on a crusade to champion the cause of the innocent, the helpless, the powerless, in a world of criminals who operate above the law.
Hey, it's me, and welcome to this video. Now, the medical examiner who checked the pictures and footage of the dead shooter, Trump shooter, on the roof, said that there was something wrong with the blood splatters, that normally if a person gets shot from the front, then there would be brains and all kinds of blood in the back of the person, a kind of puddle all the way going back, and lots of pieces of flesh and whatnot. But the pictures and the footage show that there was blood dried on his face, under his chest, and of course, blood kind of dribbled down because of the very slight slope. But what's wrong with that? Well, I put together a couple of pictures, right? So you can see that the actual blood that was found was basically under the chest and dried on his face. And if you look at the angle of where the current story goes that the sniper took out the shooter, it would be a shot straight at the guy's head. But yet the blood doesn't appear in the back, and the brain didn't get blown out and end up around his ankles, right? So that doesn't make any sense. And this is where the water tower story comes in. Now, of course, I usually dismiss the story, second shooter. It's kind of like the JFK thing. But we've seen so many similarities with the JFK hit. A prime location unguarded by the Secret Service or police that should have been guarded. An incredible lapse. A perfect shot, a headshot, and all kinds of catastrophic failures. And a lone gunman who acted alone, which is what the media said right away. And then, connections to Cuba and Russia. Well, the same kind of narrative came out about this guy very quickly, including that he was just taken out. Now, of course, you can talk about that they didn't notify the Trump people that Trump shouldn't go on stage. They knew the guy was in place on the rooftop and still allowed Trump to walk out and start his speech, giving the shooter time to aim and take 8 shots. Now, the water tower story is usually that there's a second shooter, that maybe that is the guy who shot Trump, but it's pretty obvious that the shooter was crooks on that roof and he was taken out. But what about the person on the water tower, if there was a person there? Well, my theory, years and years of experience playing Battlefield, I know a thing or two about sniping, and my conclusion so far, based on what I've seen, is that this person was a black op person, where if the shooter chickened out and didn't fire the shots, then that person would take out Trump, and then the snipers would see Crooks on the roof and take him out, thinking that he was the one that fired the shots. And at the same time, if Crooks does take the shots, as he did, you take him out, because then he can't talk. Because it turns out just before he started aiming and firing, he was checking his phone. Why would you check your phone, right? Somebody told him, do it now. And so I believe that the person on the water tower, if there was such a person, was the person in charge of making sure that Crooks was shot after he fired at Trump. And that's why the blood stains and the blood splatters are around his face and under his chest. Because if you look at the angle, as you can see from the photos or illustrations that I have, the angle is completely different. It's from the side and from an elevated position downwards. And the other sniper, which is the current narrative, that would be a straight shot at his head, and it would cause all kinds of damage and a giant blood splatter in the back with brains everywhere. But that didn't happen. But if you have a shot from the water tower downwards, the bullet goes in, and it's a lot of internal bleeding, and it's kind of covered because the person is lying on the ground, so there's no real place for the blood to splatter. It just kind of flows out of the body onto the roof, and that's why it started leaking downwards, because of the slight slope. And that's why there was blood around his face that was dried up, and that his head was not disassembled to put it in a nice way. And so I believe, so far from what I've seen, that the person on the water tower was a black ops person to make sure that the shooter didn't chicken out, and that if he did take the shots, that he would be killed if the other counter snipers didn't take him out. And maybe he did. And I think the counter snipers that are supposedly the ones that took out Crooks, maybe they were firing at some tree in the distance. We'll never know. Now, the curious thing is that the FBI was on the scene right away, and almost immediately they used equipment to spray away all the blood, all the evidence of where the blood splatters were, cleaning it completely. And we're talking about just hours after the whole thing. Why would you do such a thing unless the blood splatters and the rest of it doesn't match the narrative? And so is there a cover-up here? Now, if you heard Victoria Nuland, in my opinion, an expert on black ops, she was posing as Undersecretary of State for a while there, but she was involved in Ukraine, all kinds of dark stuff. Well, she was saying that Putin was going to have an unhappy surprise, that President Trump will not become president. And how would she know that? She said that just 2 days before the assassination attempt. And it could be, that it's connected to Ukraine. They want the war to go on. They think President Trump will stop the war. And many other things are at play here. But I can obviously say that the Secret Service and DHS intentionally caused a security lapse, because you cannot have this extreme carelessness and neglect on so many different aspects of what the Secret Service usually does without it being on purpose. The chances would be 1,000,000,000 to 1 that this was just a series of unfortunate accidents and mishaps. No, it's just not possible.